image that you see here is not the Meatpacking District, but I wanted to set the stage a little bit for how I began to photograph that neighborhood. When I first came to New York, it was 1977. I came in the summer of 1977. It was the summer of the Son of Sam. It was the first day I arrived in New York was the day of the blackout, 77. And that October, the Yankees won the World Series, and the Bronx was burning. So that was my moment to arrive. I came as a student to attend Cooper Union, which I'm very proud of, but very upset about right now, for reasons that some of you may be aware of. The school has been tuition-free since 1859, but beginning this fall, students will be paying tuition for the first time. Anyway, in 1980, I graduated from Cooper, and the first project that I began, fortunately, I didn't owe any money because I went to a tuition-free school, and I got some grants and was paying $50 a month for an apartment on East 4th Street. And I began photographing the Lower East Side with a 4x5 view camera. I worked with another photographer named Ed Fausti, who was also a graduate of Cooper, and he and I went out together working with the large camera. And we did about a year photographing every part of the Lower East Side, including what's referred to nowadays as the East Village. So we were basically doing 14th Street down to the Brooklyn Bridge. And then I went on to other things. I photographed Lower Manhattan, the financial district. This is the aftermath of the ticker tape parade for the return of the hostages from Iran. Some of you may be old enough to remember these things. And in 1983, it was the 100th anniversary of the Brooklyn Bridge. And in those days, there was no Battery Park City. It was still rubble, and construction was just beginning when I took this photograph. And of course, the Twin Towers were there. And this is how we got around in those days. Some of you may remember this. And this vehicle was photographed right at the World Trade Center. So in 1985, I had completed the Lower East Side project. I had been photographing Central Park. I was the first photographer who worked for the Central Park Conservancy. And I was looking for a new project, but wasn't sure exactly what it was I was going to do. So one day in January of '85, I decided to walk through the Meatpacking District, and I actually walked up into Chelsea on the west side along 10th Avenue, mostly. This is Washington Street, and on the left is what's now referred to as the High Line. And this would have been, at some point during the middle of the day, the early morning hours you would have seen hundreds of men in white smocks, bloodied white smocks, moving big pieces of carcasses of meat around. But by 9 o'clock in the morning, that was all over. And during the day, it was almost empty. This is underneath the High Line, which is now the beer garden of the Standard Hotel. And I'll come to some after pictures in a minute. This is also on Washington Street. Washington Street. This is right in front of what is the Standard Hotel, and on the corner there is now a bar called Hogs and Heifers, which did not exist in those days. So this work, I did about 3 days of this. It was cold. It was not very, I wasn't feeling terribly inspired for some reason. Because when I look at it now, I think, wow, I was onto something. Anyway, I developed the film. I looked at it. These 4x5 pieces of film, I looked at it, I never printed any of it, it just stayed in a box. And I went on later that year, in 1985, I made my first trip along what was the Iron Curtain. I traveled all the way from the Baltic to the Adriatic Sea, photographing the former Iron Curtain. I also photographed Berlin, and I've gone back repeatedly over the years. I was there right after the wall opened up, and I photographed the aftermath of the wall and the rebuilding of Berlin. So I moved on, and I lived in Amsterdam for a number of years. I married a Dutch woman and moved over there. Anyway, I came back to New York. Never really left New York because I always had an inexpensive pied-à-terre on the Lower East Side. Yeah, it's a little more than that now, but so about a year and a half ago, I opened the box up and was looking at the negatives, and I started scanning them, and it was amazing. I decided I just had to photograph it again. So that's what I did, and this is the sequence of pictures that's in the book. It starts with this image, and then goes to the present. When I did the Lower, I revisited the Lower East Side as well, and I have a book that's available on that. In that case, I was not always repeating the exact pictures, not very often, in fact. But in this case, it just cried out to be done. There's no place in New York where you have this kind of abrupt transformation. And the Meatpacking District, because it was the meat district, was slow to gentrify. It wasn't until the meat businesses moved up to Hunts Point in the Bronx that the area became a possible place for people to live. Yes, there were artists who lived in the upper floors of some of these buildings in those days. But, it didn't smell very good over there. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It was a pretty tough place to live in. Right here, you see a red door here. That was a club called the Mine Shaft. As you may remember, there were this part of town, there were a lot of sex clubs, mostly leather clubs, but there were other kinds of things going on. And of course, there was a lot of prostitution up and down Washington and up into 10th Avenue. And in this year, 1985, the mine shaft was closed down. It was at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And that's the same scene today. So we go from the mine shaft to vegan ice cream. It is good ice cream, though. Van Leeuwen ice cream. That was the image I showed before. And in some cases, I moved a little to a different location because it's really important to me to make good photographs. So even the after photographs, I want them to have some integrity as photographs. So it made more sense here to move a little to the left, still at the same corner. Move a little to the left and show where the ending of the High Line is. That, of course, it used to cross the street and go through the building to the south. And this was under the High Line. And this is around the corner. The people are lined up to get into the beer garden. And whatever you think of all of this, it's great. It makes for great photographs. All this kind of crazy juxtapositions and the way the structures weave together, the way the High Line passes through the building, which is what it did, of course. Originally, it passed through buildings. And then I also did a number of new photographs that are not exactly mirrored with an original photograph. So this is looking down on Washington Street from the High Line. There's all this, wonderful stuff, the way the city sort of fits together. And this is looking more or less in the opposite direction, back up at the High Line. A sort of hanging gardens over some still existing meat businesses. These were all the new pictures were taken in last year, in 2000, mostly the summer and fall. This is Gansevoort Street, and what you can see here, so you might be able to just see there's a little red neon right here. And that's Florent, a restaurant that was there for many years that Florent Morellet started. He started it in January of 1985 when I did these pictures. For me, in my mid-20s, 1985, I was, Florent was like, that was a whole other scene, and it was expensive, and I couldn't even think of going there. It actually wasn't that terribly expensive a restaurant, but for me, for me, going out was like going to Kiev on 2nd Avenue, there are a number of places that the B&H Diner and 2nd Avenue, places like that. And in some situations, it doesn't look that much different.
Is that restaurant still there? No.
But my 15-year-old son informs me that that's a Maserati, so that is different. And that's the same scene from a different angle. The restaurant on the left was where Florent was. And this is just around the corner from that on, this would be Hudson. And then a little further south, really getting into the West Village, but there was no real boundary between the Meatpacking District and the West Village. It all kind of ran together. So this is around Jane Street, I believe. This one was kind of hard to do because it wasn't that interesting a scene anymore. But I went back numerous times, and then finally there was this interesting array of people, and it made it a photograph. And this is also down there. This is near West Bend. And you can see some interesting things, like you have a sign here saying David Dinkins. This is not for mayor, this was for borough president. And there's a sign here that says that if you park here illegally, you will have your air taken out of your tires. So then we jump forward to 25 years, and the sign is still there in exactly the same spot.
That's the Bill Gottlieb building. You know Bill Gottlieb?
This one is it's
It's not here. He doesn't hear me.
I'm fond of this pair. I like the smart car in the foreground. This is kind of sad to see. This was Little West 12th, right on where 11th Avenue turns into the West Street or the West Side Highway, and that pier. Well, you'll see. The buildings are gone here. The pier has been, all that's left is this structure, steel structure. So, there is a historic preservation district in the Meatpacking District, and if they'd gotten there earlier, they probably would have saved these buildings. But fortunately, there's a significant amount of it that's well preserved. But I do, I have to say though that I am a little fond of some of the crazy architectural stuff going on the West Side. I think it makes it's an exciting visual place now. So this is on the pier looking to the east. It says, "Bikes are beautiful here." This was a young woman on a skateboard going by. And this is the Whitney Museum under construction. And this is out 11th Avenue and the West Side Highway. You can see that by this time, 85, the West Side Highway, what was formerly the elevated highway, is gone. So I'm not sure exactly what year it came down. I have a photograph as sort of more of a snapshot. It's not part of this series that I took just a few years ago of a piece of stonework from the original highway. It's just been lying out there on the waterfront for all these years. And in 1985, this was a hotel of dubious quality, and it's still it's one of these places that you can rent by the hour. So even though the Meatpacking District has changed dramatically, there are still some bits of grit and sort of the thing about the whole West Side, if you think about it, it was the docklands of New York, and so it was always a rough and ready area. The hotels, catered to the longshoremen and the people who were coming off the ships, and so there was always it was always an area of, kind of an anything goes area. So then when it became more desolate, after the harbor, everything moved to New Jersey and to the container terminal over there, it just became an area where these kinds of clubs and hotels and bars and things were located. This is 14th Street from the High Line. And this is the High Line, of course. This is right adjacent to the Chelsea market. I love these bridges. This one is sort of, I think of it as kind of Venetian in design, and this one is more Art Deco. The whole structure of the High Line is a Deco kind of thing. This is an incredible brick structure.
Are they used?
I'm not sure that they are. I think I saw a picture of one recently that seemed to be empty. Somebody had photographed one. So I'm not sure what's going on up there. And this is looking back towards the building that contains now the Chelsea Market and various other things. This is not on the 9th Avenue side, this is on the 10th Avenue side. And here it is today. Some people have joked that the way you can tell the new photographs right away is because there are these orange cones. They're in all the pictures. And this is up, I guess this is not 17th Street, something like that, 18th Street. And this is it now. That's the opening, you know, that sort of theater-like space that's on the High Line that I'm sure most of you have seen. In those days, you know, there was nobody around. This building back here, this massive building, was pretty much empty. Now, you know, you see there's windows in there. You know, the High Line has been turned into that, and then you have all these people popping around. You have a little dog being walked. Tour buses going through, you know. This is on 10th Avenue, near there. And you can see there's the Empire State Building, and there's this housing project. And if you look at it now, I moved back across to the High Line because now there's, where that vacant lot was, is now this restaurant park. But you can still see there's the Empire State Building, and there's that. So we're now at the sort of the northern end of what you know, there's some discussion about, does the Meatpacking District really extend north of 14th Street? And, you know, I don't really worry about that kind of thing. It feels to me like it does for a couple of blocks at least. And then it sort of turns into what I think of as Chelsea. So this is kind of my northern most point here. So you see the High Line is right there. And this is it last year, the same grouping of buildings here, you know, this kind of crazy stuff. This building now, where this construction is now well above ground. We have a reminder here that not everyone is so well off in the city. And we have orange cones and things. And this is under the High Line, you know, contemporary photograph looking towards the IAC building, which was designed by Frank Gehry. And from the High Line. Jean Nouvel did this building. Shakira Bond did this building right here, which just won the Pritzker Prize. It's a little grouping of modern architecture. And then this wonderful structure here that's old. it's great to see, for me, to see the kinds of juxtapositions of old and new. And then stepping back to 14th Street and Hudson, where it splits between 9th and Hudson. This is what was originally the Port Authority building. And this is it. Yeah. This is 14th Street looking west towards the High Line, Western Beef. You can get fresh chicken livers and turkey legs and wings, 49 cents a pound. And this is the same scene. It's the kind of thing that where, I'm doing an almost exact before or after, but I went to a lot of trouble, I have to tell you, to find a moment where it coheres as a photograph, and not just to sort of do, just kind of dumbly repeat myself. So, I did a number of different frames. Remember, I'm using a 4x5 view camera, which is very slow working with it. You're on a tripod, you have a cloth over your head to see through it. Each piece of film has to be loaded in one at a time.
Did you bring the old photo?
No, I didn't. Well, yes, I did a couple of times. I had a set of prints, and I occasionally would bring them. So I don't know why I said no. I didn't always. I mean, I kind of knew what I needed to do for some of them, and I just did it. And I wasn't always, it didn't, like here, there was no way I could repeat this shot, because that parking lot is now the Gansevoort Hotel, and all I would have had would be the entrance of the hotel. So I kind of moved over to the left. So you still see that building? That's the building. It says Edward Armold Company. And now it's that building right there. And there's where the parking lot was, right there. And there's more. Oh. There are things that are sort of incongruous in the area, given the amount of gentrification that's happened so rapidly. And Prince Lumber is hanging on, but I hear that they're moving uptown. I guess they still have a place down in Soho, right? Anyway, I love the way this guy sort of gestured. Yeah, almost as if I posed him, but no, he did that on his own. He didn't even know I was there. And then the book ends with the Apple store at 14th Street with the iPhones glowing up in the sky.